Well, in the meantime, the National Human Rights Commission has condemned what it describes as the use of disproportionate physical force resulting in the removal of Comfort Emanson in an inhumane and degrading manner. At a press conference, the Executive Secretary of the Commission, Tony Ojukwu, described the incident as a severe violation of the dignity and privacy of Ms. Emanson. He called on the government to address the issues of human rights involving Ms. Emanson, as well as Fuji musician Wasiu Ayinde Marshal. The Commission also issued an advisory to aviation authorities and stakeholders on the right to dignity and protection against torture, inhuman and degrading treatment in industry operations.
The National Human Rights Commission notes with serious concern several actions that appear to constitute violations of Ms. Comfort Emanson's rights, which include the use of disproportionate physical force to restrain and/or remove the passenger from the aircraft in an inhumane and degrading manner, and the stripping and exposure of the passenger's intimate and private body parts, in our opinion, constitute a severe violation of her dignity and privacy. We have taken unprecedented steps today to issue an advisory to all authorities and persons exercising powers over the aviation industry on the right to dignity and protection against torture, inhuman and degrading treatment in aviation operations in Nigeria.
We saw how social media platforms allowed the video depicting a naked woman to be spread on their platform. That goes against the community guidelines of all the known platforms that we all use in our daily lives. And the Commission will not stop at addressing the press. We are also going to write to each of these social media platforms outlining how they breached their operational guidelines as it relates to human rights.
For more on the aviation issues in Nigeria, especially on the rules of engagement while on board, I'm now joined by Johnny Agim, a senior advocate of Nigeria, expecting to be joined by Tony Ukachukwu, publisher, CEO, Aviators Africa. He'll be joining us from Lagos. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight tonight. Well, so many issues on the table here. Let's, the human rights issues are being raised concerning the treatment or ill treatment, if you like, of Miss Comfort Emanson. And then again, on the other hand, the question as to whether the Minister of Aviation, Festus Keyamo, has the right to withdraw the case that's already before the court, of course, in the case of the same Miss Emanson.
Okay, first let me say that it's actually an issue that everyone should condemn. Every right-thinking Nigeria should condemn. But what it goes to show is that we lack processes and procedures in handling and managing crisis in Nigeria, particularly the aviation sector, as we see in this instance. What I want to say is, talking about the minister, whether the minister has the powers, no, of course. Don't forget, it is not the ministry itself that prosecuted this matter. Right. I'm sure it is from what the story we got from all the, because none of us have the facts, as it were. We just gleaned from the news and all of that. So it's AON that laid the complaint through Ibom Air and all of that, and then the police prosecuted this matter. So it is not right to say that the minister is the one who withdraw the matter. He could only have
on
absolutely on AON for them to withdraw the charge against the lady and then let this matter be withdrawn.
Well, would you say it's a case of all is well that ends well, or will there be consequences down the line in terms of precedents that's been set here when there are no consequences for misbehavior, whether it's the Senator Oshomole situation that we had in the same aviation sector early this year? In the case of Kwam that happened just within 5 days, and then you had Emanson. None of these people have had to be, to pay or be punished for their misbehavior. Are we sending the right signals that, we can get away with murder? Even in the case of Kwam, he's been rewarded you know, by being given a position of ambassador of the aviation sector for good behavior?
I think I'm going to look at it from a different angle. I don't want to believe that Kwam has been rewarded. From what we read, they've been... because as it were, I don't have the facts. Some of these things we just read, and like you are saying now, we've heard that he's been asked to be an ambassador for safety and security in the airline sector and all of that. So I'm sure...
And it's been considered for Ms. Emanson too.
Absolutely.
Based on
so if that is the issue, I think that what that goes to show is that the government is trying to make those who themselves ordinarily would have been victim of this issue become those who will now be helping the public to know that some of these actions that they take might lead to might have dire consequences. So I don't think basically it's rewarding them, but it's putting them out there to be the ones who will now begin to advocate for safety in the airspace. I think it's not really, I don't want to agree that it's actually they are being rewarded, but rather they are putting them as the face, because of course we already know that these are the persons who had issues that led to what we are talking about.
Okay, it's interesting you're looking at it from that angle, which is, I mean, a very valid angle. But before I bring in Tony Ukachukwu, I believe he's joining us from Lagos and he's ready to have this conversation. There have also been questions raised as to how the Kwam situation was treated in terms of, you know, no jail. I mean, he didn't have to be remanded. He was not mishandled in any way. And when you consider the gravity of what he did by, you know, trying to stop physically an aircraft from taking off, and when you compare that with the situation with Emanson, that there seems to be this disparity. You know, law is applied differently for the high and mighty and differently for the regular Nigerian. Do you see that playing out in this situation?
Well, if you ask me, I think I'll say that is the way it seems. Absolutely, the actions of Kwam were actually very despicable, to say the least. Now, that of Mrs. Emanson, the only thing we could see and hear is the testimony of Ibom Air and the Minister for Aviation. We've not heard from Emanson. So because we've not had our own side of the story, it's difficult for one to come to that conclusion that the laws were applied differently. But the case of Kwam, completely something that we should all condemn. And of course, maybe perhaps because he's popular, he's known, and so hence some of these actions were taken this way. And of course, he was not in the plane, as it were, to obstruct the plane from taking off, even though we saw the footage that shows that he was standing in the way of the plane before he was eased out and all of that. So, like I said, because I don't have those facts, I would not want to come here and begin to
okay, make conjectures. All right, let's bring in very quickly Tony Ukachukwu. Thank you for joining us on Newsnight. He's the publisher, CEO, Aviators Africa. Let's get your thoughts on how things have played out so far, both in the case of Kwam and you know, the eventual release from you know, detention of Ms. Emanson for her misbehavior in the aircraft. Of course, the lifetime ban has been lifted, and well, she's likely to be an ambassador of good behavior too for the airline industry. Let's get your thoughts.
Thank you for having me. First of all, I think the decisions that were reached immediately the Kwam incident happened was rushed. I think the rush to suspend the pilot was quick because investigations were supposed to be wrapped. In my personal opinion, I would have thought that her license should have been, she should have been removed from active flying pending when investigation is concluded, rather than suspending her immediately. And then for Kwam, of course, IG and the Attorney General Federation was petitioned, but we now know how it all played out. I mean, they've reduced it to a 1-month ban and then made him an ambassador of good behavior. And then, of course, Emanson, that was just released from Kirikiri, also is being released. But I think it's just like the Director of Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority for Public Relations and Consumer Protection has said, this is a case where our systems are being tested to know, what areas there are gaps so that we can improve on them, because aviation industry, is dynamic and continues to evolve. But I think that again, the AON, Airline Operators of Nigeria, ban on comfort saying was also, I think, was rushed. I think a whole lot of things were rushed, even when the stories were still developing and we've not heard from all the quarters.
Of course, a lot has been said also about what is seen to be a speedy arraignment of Ms. Emanson. Let me stay with you, Tony Ukachukwu. This issue that led to the whole fracas between Ms. Emanson and Ibom Air, the fact that she was, like we're all told, when you get into the aircraft, you have to switch off your phones. But why do Nigerian Airlines insist that you must switch off your phones, even if it's on, airline mode? Is there really any risk to the flight?
I think we should stay on the side of caution. For what passengers should understand is that for airlines, there are conditions for carriage. And once you buy an airline ticket, you enter into a contractual agreement. So if you are in an aircraft and the instruction is switch off your phone, I think it behoves on you to just obey the simple instructions, even if you know better that switching off, putting your phone in flight mode would not cause a crash or anything like that, but just being on the side of caution. But the truth is, one singular phone being on in the aircraft will really not cause any harm. It's when there are multiples of phones during takeoff and landing that might interfere with transmissions. But basically, at both 30,000 feet, nothing really happens. But again, I need to go back to, passengers obeying the instructions from the crew. If they say switch off your phone, kindly switch off your phone. And then, of course, if they allow you to put it on safe flight mode, then it's okay. But I have issue where passengers begin to contest the instructions being carried out, being given to them by safety and security operatives in the airport. That's where I have my worry.
Still staying with you, you've had engagements with the airline industry for years now. From your observations and your findings and your experience over time, would you say that in terms of customer relations on the part of the airlines, that they actually reflect good training that is expressed at the end of the day in the way they engage with, with passengers or customers, if you like? Or is this, what we have seen so far, is it reflective of the fact that there's some level of training that is missing and that needs to be fixed?
I need to also state that the aviation industry stakeholders go through rigorous trainings from the technical crew to the non-technical crew. However, I need to state that we need to up our game when it comes to trainings and retrainings. As it has shown, balls have been dropped here and there, both from the Quam 1 case and quote-unquote the Quam 2 case, in this case, Comfort's case. Balls have been dropped in some areas. I think we need to, relook how trainings are being conducted in our sector and kind of level up, because again, aviation is global, so we can't be seen to be a laughingstock in the Committee of Nations to say, how is it happening here? Because how it's happening here in Nigeria should be how it's happening in the US or Canada, because aviation is global. So we need to up our standard to make sure that we have an international operating standard that is seen everywhere. So answering your question, I think some level of training need to be looked into when it comes to whether it be ground staff or the airline or officials.
Senior Advocate, is it enough to say that the parties have learned their lessons? So, all the parties involved in the incidents have learned their lessons, and so they can go and sin no more. Like, Tony said there, aviation is a global industry. Absolutely. What are the optics? Is it good for Nigeria that these kind of things can happen and we have treated it the way we have? What are the implications? Very quickly.
Absolutely. It is not, like I said earlier on, I think there are things that we need to reconsider. Like I said, you can see it shows that protocols for handling issues like this are really not the best. Because like Mr. Tony just said, aviation is global. So if I'm boarding a flight in Abuja, I shouldn't be treated differently like I'm boarding a flight in Houston. And right. So if those processes, and of course, the aviation sector is dynamic. We should understand that some of these things need to actually meet international best practices.
Absolutely.
So asking them to go because they have learned their lesson is actually not the best for us as a people, even for the optics, because definitely people will see us as people who actually don't have proper procedures in handling things like this.
All right, I have to leave it there. Johnny Agim is Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joining me here in the studio. Thank you very much. Antonio Ukachukwu is the publisher, CEO, Aviators Africa. Thank you for joining us on Newsnight tonight.